Okay, good evening. I will call the Town of Essex Select Board meeting for Monday, April 21st to order. First topic, agenda additions or changes. Is there anything from the board? Anything from staff?
None from staff.
Okay. With no changes, we do not need to approve the agenda, which brings us to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time when members of the public can comment, raise questions, concerns to the select board. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you're online, you can raise your virtual hand. That's done through the React. It's a little heart on the bottom center of your screen, and from there you can select raise hand.
Just so everyone knows, Shannon is remote. He's the phone number that's on Zoom right now. He's having trouble, so I'm going to have him on here. So if I'm looking at my phone, it's probably because I'm trying to connect with him, and I might try to get him on. So I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to help a board member.
Thank you for that. Come on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm your rep to the Chittenden Solid Waste District. We got two items that I just think you ought to know about, and if anybody has questions, we're in the process, we went out for a bond, and we're in the process of constructing a new materials recycling facility. Initially, we thought we were going to be able to use a piece of property that we currently owned on Redmond Road, and we had done some initial testing 4 or 5 years ago. Things looked like we could get enough land that wasn't wetlands to be able to do that. Over the last 3 or 4 years, the wetlands have taken over the whole property and couldn't find a big enough piece of dry ground to use. So we have purchased another piece of property that is just beyond where the organics facility is now, on the west side of the road. It's a big piece of property in there. We bought it from Heinsberg Sand and Gravel. It's a lot of Adams sand on an A slope, if you know what that is, but it's going to be a buildable site, and we're doing a redesign of the building to be able to fit on that site and do those kinds of things. That has delayed the process a little bit and has increased the cost because we're really concerned of what steel is going to cost, aluminum, those kinds of things. So the price of the building is increasing. We're not looking to go out for another bond or anything. We're going to, try to make everything work with resources that we have on board now. And with the second item is an increase in the solid waste management fee. Initially, when the waste district was started, there was a per capita charge for the towns. And we would go to the select boards and tell them that we needed, $6 per person in town or something like that. And then you would have to program that in your annual budget and then ship that to the waste district. We did away with that.
I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm not seeing or hearing anything.
Shannon's saying the same thing. Okay.
Now I'm hearing somebody.
We did away with that after about 3 years. Now we have this solid waste management fee, which is a tax on the waste that's taken to the landfill in Coventry. We're going to be needing to increase that fee, one, to get some more capital funds for the increased price at the MRF, and that increase is probably going to amount to about $15 a household in the county. If you're having your trash picked up, it's going to be about a $15 increase. We've done some calculations and hopefully doing that. So the MRF is moving forward and going to cost us a little bit more money, and we're going to have an increase in the solid waste management fee. Sarah will be in the next couple of weeks to talk about the budget, and that'll probably be one of the items that she brings up also. But I wanted to give you a little advance notice, so if there are any questions or whatever, you can contact me or, figure out what. But we're not going to be instituting a per capita charge for the towns to catch us. It'll be paid through people's trash bill.
And just for the record, for those who may not know you, and just for the record, can you state your name?
Yeah, Alan Nye. And I've been on the Waste District Board for like 23 years and was on the Select Board for 18 years before that, so so if there's any questions, don't hesitate to, give me a call or whatever.
Sounds good. Appreciate the heads up, and we look forward to Sarah coming back in a couple weeks.
Very good.
Thank you.
Great. Have a good evening.
You too. Ken, come on up.
Good evening, Ken Signorello. I notice on the consent agenda, there's an item D, consider approval of trapping locations to support rabies vaccinations of wildlife. I'm just thinking that this might have been the kind of things that you might ask the folks that you appointed to give you advice, to advise on this. That would be the Conservation and Trails Committee. Just saying, we might have been able to help locate other areas that might have been good. Or even find private properties that might have been even better locations for those trappings. Thanks.
And I think that the USDA located those and made the request. I don't think that there was...
In the memo, it specifically says state-owned, town-owned property, but there are probably other locations that might have been good. And I'm not sure who made the recommendations for those particular properties. I'm just saying that the Conservation and Trails Committee wasn't asked at all. Maybe it would have been a good thing. I don't know.
Okay,
That's what you hired us for, so.
thank you. Come on up.
My name's Ella Rusin, and I don't have a lot to say. I wanted to introduce myself formally as the new reporter at the Essex Reporter. I've been emailing with some of you, and I've spoken with some of you in person, but for anyone that doesn't know my face and my name, this is it. And my contact information is on our website if anyone ever wants to get in touch.
Thanks. Welcome.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Either in the room or online? Greg?
Just that Shannon is looking to pull something off of the consent agenda. We missed that portion for him. He was dealing with technical difficulties. So I think he's on now and might be able to speak up, but wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thanks, Greg. Tracy, can you hear me? Perfect. I thought I'd have a better technical situation where I'm at, but glad to zoom in real quick from the phone. I'd like to pull off item F off the consent agenda to consider approval of FY26 paving program bid award.
Is that, since we haven't actually approved an agenda, is that a motion to amend the agenda to move 5F to, we'll say, 6JK?
Yes, please.
Actually, if it would be considered friendly, let's move it to G and then move all of the executive items down.
You do
just in
have
case.
Aaron here who could probably best speak to that if you wanted to put it at
A?
Yeah.
No.
I don't have
that
memo with me.
Yep. Aaron, since truck 104 is on as well, let's throw that as C and move everything down by one to lump yours together, if that would be. Shannon, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, that's totally fine.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Andy. Motion to amend the agenda currently includes removing 5F from consent and moving it to 6C and moving the remainder of the business items down one. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carries 5-0. We now have an approved amended agenda. Okay, and with no other public to be heard, we will move along to consent agenda. Reminder, we just amended, so we're only talking about 5A through E that is on the physical agenda. Andy?
I move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan.
A second.
All those in favor of the consent agenda, A through E, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Tracy, I believe that when a member is participating electronically, we have to do a roll call vote.
Yep, it's only if it's not unanimous.
Thank you.
Yep, I made the same mistake the last time this happened.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that moves us along to business items. Item 6A, interview volunteer to serve on Essex Free Library Board of Trustees. Iris Banks. Is Iris here online? Nope. If there is no objection, I will just move along to 6B. And if Iris does come in, we can slot her in if the board is okay with that. So moving along to 6B. Andy?
Since I am Janet's husband, I'm going to recuse myself from this agenda item
Appreciate it.
to avoid the possibility of an appearance of conflict of interest.
Thanks, Andy. We'll come get you. Okay, so 6B, interview volunteer to serve on the Essex Free Library Board of Trustees, Janet Watts. Come on up and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested.
Hi, I'm Janet Watts, Andy's wife. I've been a library trustee for, I think it's 20 years. So I'm kind of the institutional knowledge on the board. Been there for 3 different librarians and lots of different happenings, including COVID. Right now, I'm the chair of the board. And it's really interesting going through the process of potentially building a new library. Our library is too small for the population we have, but it's very active. It's been even more active recently. It's very, it's really cool to see the library change, to add the library of things, to add programs like craft programs that people enjoy, and to drive by the library and see the parking lot full, but to know that, you know, people drive by because the parking lot's full and they can't get into the library when they want to. So working on the new library would be something that would be very beneficial to the town, I think.
We'll kick it over for board questions. Ethan, Kendall, Shannon, you too, you're online.
Hi, Ethan.
Hi. I was just going to ask you if you felt that there was anything that the select board could do more for the library.
The big problem, 2 big problems at the library are parking and space. So, and this is what I asked last year, is to use space in the town that the town owns, like let the library use it for programming, because it's getting too crowded. When we have a big program at the library, there's literally not parking. And when we have a big program, then that means people aren't using the library for, you know, getting books or using the computers. So those are the 2 things that, like, we could really use some help. And we did change the signage on the Historical Society. So now the library is on those parking spaces, and we use those. So, you know, that gave us 3 more. That's not really enough. And using space at Memorial Hall sometimes is a problem with coordinating with the Essex Players. And it seems like there could be times where, like, we could use it during the day and the Essex players could use it at night. So a better way to handle that programming would be super beneficial for us.
Awesome. Is the parking across the street, is that only, is any of that, or would the RAS
It's
be there?
available. Nobody really likes to use it
Use it
because
'cause they have to
nobody wants to
cross.
cross Route 50.
Right.
We can also park at Memorial Hall.
Oh, wow.
And occasionally people park up at the elementary school and
Yeah.
walk down.
And I'm asking because I don't know, but is this space, is there a scheduling problem to use this space for, or would it just be because it's so far for programming, or would it not make sense, or?
Do you mean this actual?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not sure.
And then
there might be programs that would be available to use in here. But like, we try and keep them closer.
Right.
Because then we have staff out of the building
Right.
and they're not in the building to help.
Right.
So
So,
it becomes a balance thing with staffing.
but being able to use Memorial Hall more would be beneficial.
It would be beneficial.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I'm just curious if you're still seeing an expansion in the use of the Library of Things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are pretty much continually adding to it. We now have a telescope. I think that's probably the most expensive thing we have is our telescope.
Oh.
There's a loom, like you make hats with, and there's sewing machines. I had no idea that we had sewing machines. That was really cool. The ghost hunting kit, though, is still I have no idea.
Shannon, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a couple questions actually. Ms. Watts, thank you so much, first off, for all your service. I think you mentioned 20 years and you still want to do more. Thank you very much. Libraries are extremely important to our towns and our community. In your online form, you talked about how it's important to have institutional knowledge, but you also said, you want to help not only be the voice of the past, but help us go, or what you said, where we go from here. And I'm curious, what is the vision you see for the future of the library?
We really do need a bigger space. We've outgrown our current space. And so the Upper Main Street plan is the next thing. And planning for that is, what we're doing. I know the library that the architects put forward was a little pie in the sky. It was a little too big, and everybody kind of went, "Oh, whoa, wait a minute." That's more than we asked for, so something in between maybe what we have and what they thought we might need. But, planning for the library for 50 years, we definitely need something bigger. One of the interesting things like we're balancing too is online resources and like the cost of online resources and balancing what those are. So that's kind of interesting because those are becoming more and more popular as people, don't want to leave their home to get their library book, I actually currently have a library book that I just downloaded today from the Green Mountain Library Consortium, and that's become very popular. And all of our online resources, online magazines, online videos are all becoming really popular. And we watch those numbers grow every month, even as we see, visits to the library grow where people want to be social and get together and do crafts are very popular at the library. The card making and the Lego club, knitting, that's all very popular at the library right now.
That's great. How is it that you are bringing in new people and drawing people to the library presently? And what do you think you could do over the next term to increase that?
The Friends of the Library advertise. We have, and the library does too, with Front Porch Forum, with Facebook, with Instagram. I don't think we're on like Blue Sky or anything else yet. But that's one of the ways that we do. And just kind of keep the publicity going, and keep, reaching out to people. And the big programs that bring in a lot of people. People just come to the library for the book sale or come to the library for the craft fair and come back to go to the library and see what we have. So that's part of the things. Just keep reaching out.
Great. My final question, because he's not here. Okay. No, please. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. Seeing as our board member is not here, he always asks the same question to everybody, and I think it's only fair that you get a chance to answer it. What does being a public servant mean to you?
It's giving back, and it's giving back to the community, something that was really important to my family, the library. So raising 3 kids with lots and lots of books is really important. So for education and having a place that anybody can be educated is really important, and be educated appropriately is really important. And just giving back.
Thank you so much.
And Shannon, I think we had the same idea. I was also wanting to make sure that question got asked, so we were being consistent. Janet, my only question for you is, do you have any questions for us?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
We are in the phase where we're interviewing, and I believe our second meeting in June, we will make appointments.
Okay.
So you will be hearing from us.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your years of service.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Can somebody grab Andy?
I'll get him.
Okay. And actually, that does move us to consider approval of fiscal year 2026 paving program bid and award. So Aaron, if you want to come right up and get settled. Yeah.
The town website kicks you off every 5 minutes, every 3 minutes. So anybody online that's trying to view the agenda, it keeps kicking me off every two minutes.
Is it something with the internet here?
It's been happening to us all
Is that-
day. We, staff reached out to the provider, the website provider earlier today. We were told to try a different browser or, excuse me, to try clearing your cache. It hasn't seemed to work for us, so work in progress, but it does seem like if you hit refresh.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to let everybody
Yeah, good.
be
good
aware
comment.
that it's not just you.
Yeah.
It's all
Okay.
of us.
Thanks.
Yep.
So if anyone's experiencing that at home, sorry, apologies, we're working on it. Please just hit refresh for now. That's the simplest workaround.
Okay.
Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Sorry.
I thought it was just me.
No.
You tried turning it off and back on again. Sorry, little IT humor there. Approval of fiscal year 26 paving program bid award. Aaron, hi.
The issue before you folks tonight is whether the select board will award this fiscal year's 2026 paving program to the apparent low bidder, Frank W. Wickham Construction Corp. We opened paving bids this year, April 11th. We had 5 contractors respond to the bid. All were there. Everything, there's actually a bid tab attached to this memo. Kind of gives you the breakdown of costs, associated costs, total costs. We did reject one bid due to a math error. That was J. McDonald. And we went through. Everybody had a fairly decent bid. Costs ranged from the SD Ireland's bid of $446,610 for everything, and Wickham came in with a low bid at $373,196. So it's recommended that the Town of Essex Selectboard award the FY 2026 paving contract to FW Wickham Corp. of New Hampshire in the amount of $373,196. That's it. Any questions? Or?
Any board questions?
Might have one after
Yes.
Shannon. I'd like to hear what
Yeah, Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, so it's not is that Andy or Kendall? I can't tell.
Kendall also has a question,
I'm waiting to hear what you have.
but since you asked to pull it off, I wanted to give you first crack at it.
I appreciate it. So I appreciate, the thoroughness of the bid and the memo and different things. I was curious, had a couple questions about this. One, have we done work with Whitcomb before, and what is the quality of the work? How have they done in the past? Two, I think it's important that we don't always go with the lowest bidder. We obviously, this is a New Hampshire company. We can keep money in our state or our community. That's important. I just be curious to learn a little bit more about this and why they were chosen.
FW Wickham does have plants here in the state of Vermont as well. They currently have the FY25 bid. They do very good work. At times, contractors ebb and flow, and the quality does ebb and flow with them, but we have a good staff, trained staff. One of our engineers in-house does have certifications to inspect and test pavement, so that's always a benefit to have on staff to ensure the quality of the work. And what was the second question? Oh, taking second low bidder. Per our purchasing policy, we have to go with a low bidder. FW Wickham, they had a clean bid. It just happened to be the low bid. Their math was correct. They had all the proper documentation submitted with the bid. So our recommendation is to go with the low bidder for this year's paving.
Just one point of clarification for the purchasing policy. We do have some flexibility, mostly for Shannon's knowledge, where we don't necessarily have to choose the low bidder, but it kind of depends on the purchase, the project. If it's paving and it's pretty straightforward and we're confident in the ability of all the companies that are bidding on it, we typically do go with the lowest bidder.
And my experience with Wickham, my time here, has always been positive, and they always done good work for the town when they were awarded the bid.
Great, thank you, Gary.
You can go ahead.
Shannon, are you all set?
I return the floor to you.
Okay. Kendall, did you?
I was just curious. I didn't have a chance to go through the whole bid packet, but there is an option that if the town finds more money, they'll do more paving for the same price per ton, or is that a lump sum that they give for what they do?
So when it's a negotiation, Kendall. Sometimes it depends on where it's located, the project's located. If it's all the way across town, they got to mob and demob. That's going to add extra cost. They're usually pretty good to come in and around the per ton cost that we have contracted with them. So
Okay.
they may be paving an extra street here this year for us. So all dependent on end of year funding.
Thank you.
Ethan?
Oh, I was just gonna say, isn't the most recent project, wasn't it, when they did they do Old Stage last year? Is that Wickham? I know they did the Cirque.
Well, they have, they've done projects, like I said, they've gotten the town bid 5-6 times since I've been here.
Yeah, I think
always
a
done
couple
quality
times.
work. I've
Yeah.
never really had any issue with them.
Andy, did you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Do we want to take public comment, if there is any? Any public comment on the fiscal year 26 paving program bid award? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion. Andy?
I make the motion that the Town of Essex Select Board award the FY 2026 paving contract to Frank W. Whitcomb Construction Corp. Of New Hampshire in the amount of $372,196. The work included in this bid represents that which is required to continue the department's 5-year paving plan. That sentence probably isn't necessary.
It's 373,000.
Did I misspeak? Did I misspeak?
You
My
said
apologies.
372,000.
$373,196.
There's actually two numbers in the memo. One is 169, one is 196. which one is the right one.
196.
Yeah.
196.
Oh,
The
Okay.
one in the recommendation is the correct number.
okay. Thank you for clarifying. Andy, that's your motion, 373, 196?
Yes, my
Okay.
apologies for misspeaking.
That's okay. Is there yeah. Ethan, second? Motion has been made and seconded. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving along to consider approval of truck 104 replacement for fiscal 25.
The issue before the board tonight is whether to approve the purchase of the replacement vehicle and plow equipment for truck 104. This truck was programmed and planned to be replaced fiscal year 2025 budget. We picked up quotes, as you've seen in your attachments, back in September of 2023 to plan for this purchase. Currently, the cab and chassis has been completed nearly 18 months later. And thank you. At this point in time, we're looking for approval to purchase and replace the entire truck. Kind of a little bit of backstory. When we're building a plow truck, we purchase the cab and chassis first. And then once that is complete, it's paid for. And then we take that and we take it to our secondary vendor, which upfits it with plow equipment, the bed, all of the attachments, and does all the wiring for all the controls within the cab of the truck. So right now, the first part is complete. The cab and chassis is constructed, and we're wanting to move forward with providing our vendor a check for the truck so we can move it to the next step. This next step is probably going to be another 4 to 6 months. So we'll likely get this truck right before snow flies here this winter. I think the recommendation could be shortened a bit. I know there was some discussion earlier about that. I think a recommendation of it's recommended that the select board approve the purchase and of the replacement vehicle and plow equipment for plow truck 104, and just leave it at that, and just remove that last sentence. Or last portion of the sentence.
Any questions, concerns, discussion? Kendall?
I'm just curious, what year, how old is truck 104?
Tough questions, Kendall. I think it's 9 years old.
9 years old, okay. So almost directly on our 8-year replacement plan.
Yeah, almost, but yeah. We're getting there, Kendall.
So I would just note that this is all coming right out of the capital, right? There's no cost to the taxpayers from our capital plan, so it's great.
Ethan?
Excuse me, sorry. The only question I have for you is truck 25 on order? Or is that to be ordered?
Truck 25 is on order, has been.
For
It's in its nearing. I expect it any time now.
okay. And that's okay.
Yeah. I haven't talked with Dan. I know he's been in communication with the upfitter on that. So.
Okay. And then my second question is going to be for both of you, Greg and Aaron, is if we get this signed right off, we're going to get the money out of this last year because it was approved to be replaced 25, right?
This year.
But this year until July.
Mm-hmm.
But the upfitting of the body, is that going to kind of roll into next year? Or is there a way that they're not going to bill up front for the upfitting?
So yeah, the way government finance accounting works is that you pay for the purchase, the service, the product when it's delivered. So we would be paying for the chassis now.
Right.
The plow, if the plow does not come until fiscal 26, we'd be paying for that in fiscal 26. Because it is part of the capital, it's just coming out of the approved capital plan with funds that we have. So it's a little bit different from operating in that the money's there.
Right.
But to answer your question, it will get billed in the fiscal year in which we receive the product.
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking for terms of when we start talking 5-year plan again, that we remember that because we didn't spend much last year is because we're gonna, it's kind of like what happened with the police cars, right?
Yep. Similar.
So just something to keep in mind. But I'm all for it, and I'm happy to hear about the replacement of this one, because if anybody saw on the check warrants, truck 25 continues to cost us money, so it's time to get rid of it. So thank you for all your hard work, Aaron.
Yep, and I do want to just bring your folks' attention to 18 months from quote to actually getting a cab and chassis. I can only predict that that time's gonna be extended with current and future woes with the economy. So,
Excellent point. Andy or Shannon, any questions? If there are none.
Nope, I think you sent through.
Was that a no?
That was a no.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, there's just a little bit of a delay. So with no other board comment, I will open it up for public comment if any members of the public would like to speak.
Thank you, Aaron. Hi, Ken Signorello, I have one question. I really appreciate the schedule of all the vehicle replacements. That's really nice to see that, and it's way scheduled out way in the future. One question, are those current dollars or are those projected dollars with any inflation taken into account?
for this year, they're current, and as they're projected out, we do add a % increase as they go up, and, it's 27, 28.
Like X% per year.
Correct, yes.
And you thought about the current situation and how that might need to be adjusted?
It's the same thing with whether or not it's gonna snow April 21st like it did 4 years ago today. I don't, yeah.
It's like the weather. I agree with you.
I can't forecast that. If I did, I probably wouldn't be working
Do you
here.
happen to know off the top of your hand what the rate per year is currently being added in?
I think currently we're using like 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Not that I don't know.
Yeah. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Ethan.
Make the motion that the select board approve the purchase of the replacement vehicle and plow equipment for plow truck 104.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Andy.
I second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 No, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Next on our agenda, consider approval of first, second, third-class liquor license renewal applications. I'm bringing up the memo. So it is the time of year when businesses will be submitting their applications for renewal for liquor licenses. That's why we're seeing this on our agenda again this week, as we did on I believe the 7th of April, 4th of April, 3rd of April. I don't know. Are there any questions, clarifications? Ethan?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm just curious for public knowledge for all of it, for people to see when they read this. Now, when we put the clause in there to show taxes paid, right? I think there's a very stark distinction in ownership of the property. So my question would be, and my page is gone again, let me reload it here. But my question would be, for example, when it says Essex Resort Holdings, LLC, DBA Essex Resort and Spa. Okay, the taxes are paid in full on that property, but I don't know that the owner of the business owns the property. Right? Because there's a big difference when somebody owns the business that the property is on and if the taxes are paid for. And if somebody doesn't own the property that the business is on and taxes aren't paid for, in my mind, there wouldn't be any liability to the business. But if there's a business that the taxes are or are not paid for and they own other properties within the town and they are the owner of that business, that would change my mind. And I had a long day today and didn't get all my questions as fast, and Karen helped me out about midday, so I didn't have my list fully prepared, but that would be something that I would inquire about before making a decision, because if that is the case where there's a landowner that owns many properties throughout the town and tenants are renewing liquor licenses and the property isn't paid for, understandably the businesses need to operate. They're not owned by the property owner. Now, if there's one business in the town that is owned by the property owner and they paid the taxes on that property but not the other properties, I still wouldn't approve that liquor license because of the delinquencies in the other properties. I think that was the general consensus when we asked about the taxes being paid, was in the grand scheme of things, if a business owned a property and weren't paying their taxes, you would give them incentive to pay the taxes.
Yeah, and I think that was the intent when it was asked to have whether the taxes were paid. I do agree with you there. I'm not sure if there's any. Is there an easy way to identify whether the business is the owner of the property, or does that get a little difficult?
It could be done. I think in most cases, we're probably going to know. There might be some cases where we have to do a little bit of legwork, and I'm not saying this exists, but I could imagine a case where there's an owner who's a separate business entity than the other than the name of the company doing business as, but some owners have multiple businesses or subsidiaries. I could imagine something like that. I'm not saying there is. I don't know if there is, but I could see something to that effect, which might just take some additional legwork.
Yeah. So perhaps since this item is around these liquor licenses, is it safe to say that the taxes that are delinquent, that the owner of the property is not the business that is requesting the liquor license?
Agreed.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So purposes of tonight, are we okay to?
No, because
keep-
the taxes that are paid is the owner of all the properties that the taxes aren't paid with the Essex Resort and Spa. That's the problem. The taxes are being selectively paid, in my opinion.
Okay, so I think we're back to the.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Because
Okay.
that's directly impacting the owner. But the other businesses aren't. So there's an uneasy advantage tool there in my mind that maybe not being used.
And I would
Kendall?
just say that is a perfect example of why you want to have a consistent policy where if the taxes are not paid on a property, you don't issue a license. A license is a privilege, and it is very common to deny a license if the taxes aren't paid. It's often included as a condition for licenses. So it's part of the privilege. You're tied to fulfilling your financial obligations. Taxes are a condition of licensing, a key condition for the town. These include various types of taxes, such as excise or property. For consistency, I would deny the license for an owner's property, and tenants, it should all be the same. And Ethan has pointed that out, a perfect example of it. So, that's my 2 cents.
So-
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the example that's been referenced here, though, is that, you're right. It's a different name. Essex Resort Holdings versus EOF Outlets. I don't know if those are the same owner. I believe they are. Right? Is that?
I believe so, but I'm not
Yeah, but
100%,
it's
and there might be other partners or something. in
Yeah,
there too.
I'm very leery about, without knowing the specifics of actually who owns these companies with different names, and also whether the particular license that's in question here is paid. because I think, Ethan, what you're suggesting is not approving the Essex Resort and Spa.
Correct. Correct. Because the taxes are paid on that property, in my opinion, that it's benefiting the owner of both properties.
But I don't know enough about the legal ramifications of denying that, given that it's the taxes for this particular entity are paid, and that there may be, right, as Greg, there may be other partners involved that have paid those, so I'm struggling.
Yeah, my recommendation would be is that we handle this as is this evening, and we develop a policy that is very clear as far as who, when, why we would approve or deny, just so that we have a documented policy just to protect us legally, but also make it very clear for owners and businesses who are applying for licenses as far as what that threshold is, what needs to happen, and under what circumstances.
Perfect.
If I could just jump in real quick.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm curious, when are these licenses due? Like if we were to not approve these tonight and work with the businesses, send a message, would there be a lapse of licenses, or is this not until, is it after our next meeting is basically what I'm getting at?
30th as well.
Shannon, I don't have it in front of me. I would, not knowing that, I would err on assuming that they lapse on April 30th. I think there's some that are April 30th. There's a possibility. Some are in May, but I don't know for certain. So I would hate to not provide a license and have someone have to operate without a license for a few days.
Right.
In the future, if you include that in the memo, just when they're actually, you do the same thing for when board members apply to certain boards in the committee when their term ends. If you could do that for the licensing, that'd be.
You can do that.
Yeah. Great thought. Thank you, Shannon. Andy?
In the past, all liquor licenses had a common expiration date, and I think it's just in this past year that the legislature has gone to a rolling approval. I don't know when that was effective, whether it was the beginning of the year, whether.
Yeah, and I think it changed a few years ago. It used to be sometime in May. I think it went to April. I'm not positive, which is why I don't want to give an answer, but it's been shifting over the past 5 years or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Ethan?
Yeah, my intentions tonight were not to take anybody's liquor license tonight. It was either to, table or to make a plan to make a process, because I just wanted to bring awareness to a possible situation. I don't know all the facts, but from what I read, I had my ideas, and I just wanted to make sure that they were heard and we all work towards a better plan. So.
Appreciate it.
But with that being said, I would move that the select board approve the liquor license renewal applications for the businesses located in the town of Essex, listed in the April 17th, 2025 memorandum. The only thing that I would note is that there was a date error with the delinquents of the taxes. It says 4/27/25, but everything else seems to be correct in the memo.
Gotcha. Okay. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Andy. I will open this up to public comment, if there is any. Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, since it is not unanimous, we do have a remote member, so we will need to take a roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Kendall?
No.
Shannon?
Aye.
And I will vote in the affirmative. Motion carries 4-1. Which brings us to discussion about Green Mountain Transit membership for fiscal year 2027. Greg, do you want to? Karen?
Sure. So this was an item back during budget discussions that the board had asked us to put after we made it through the budget on our April or May agenda. So here we are to discuss whether what the board would like to discuss further, or perhaps ask of GMT to get the information they need to decide whether they want to continue membership. As a reminder, we have to give 1 full fiscal year's notice. So this would be a decision that wouldn't be effective until fiscal year 27. And ultimately, what I understood from the board conversation was a concern that service reductions are continuing to occur due to budget shortfalls, yet dues continue to increase. I think that was the basis for the board asking this item to return. And I'll stop there unless there's something else I can offer.
Okay. I will note that this is just a discussion item. So if you have thoughts, questions, also just for awareness, we are having Clayton in at a meeting in the near future.
I don't think we've formalized that, but we certainly, that was part of the goal tonight, to hear
Okay.
what direction you want to take. Staff's assumption was that you would want more information, in which case we would invite Clayton in.
Okay.
If you were to tell us that you're all set and you want to continue with GMT no matter what, then I think that's the end of the conversation. But if you do want to investigate it and learn more and hear about the future, then some of those questions are what we're hoping to hear tonight, and we can look to bring Clayton into a future meeting to help steer that conversation.
Okay. Ethan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this for the past couple of years, and even more so this spring as things have continued to develop. And I looked into a couple different towns that don't have, a direct public service as far as being in the loop of Lamoille Valley busing, or Green Mountain Transit, or things like that. And what I've seemed to come to understand is that in more rural aspects, there's always a need for special transportation for people with physical disabilities, age restrictions. There's many illnesses, different things all across the board. And essentially, the way I've come to understand it is the towns individually have created a transportation enterprise or a transportation fund within the town. And originally I thought of it and I was like, well, that's crazy. But as I thought about it more, I thought about our senior busing that we have, and I thought about the key availability that we have. And I don't know all the details with it, but my idea is that if the town would be interested in exploring other options as a whole, there's some options out there that maybe we could give notice for a year. We have a year to plan. If we come up in a year and decide that we have no other option, then we simply let Green Mountain, they're not going to not let us back in. Clayton has told us before that they need us. So, but I would like to see the exploration of, will SSTA private contract with the town of Essex? There's roughly $100,000 of monies that could be used for, I don't want to call it private transportation, but essentially the town would be providing transportation service through its own funding. Is there room to expand to have another bus added to our fleet that isn't just senior busing? Maybe it's there's requirements as well as along the lines of human service funding. I'd just like to see some options, because I think we're coming to a direction where the availability of public transportation in Essex is in the rural end of Essex is going to be a lot more scarce. And I think with an aging community, and just a thriving community as general needs public transportation. So my idea would be to investigate the possibility of leaving or giving notice to GMT, exploring our options for a year, and seeing if it's something that the town could provide as a sub-service of its own. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that, if it's completely crazy, but I've been thinking a lot about it, and I really don't know any other solution. They kind of own our transportation. It's either all or nothing, and we take what we can get.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So.
Any other discussion? Kendall?
My position has just pretty much always been no service to Essex should be no cost for Essex. So I'm open to exploring any other option.
I was going to say, it looks like you have a.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
do. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I do have some words written down, but I know Colchester is not a member, but buses pass through Colchester, and because they go to Milton, which is a member, and there are stops in Colchester, and so the bus can be used, but and they don't have a seat at the table. I don't know though. What question that I would ask Clayton is, does Colchester then have to pay anything for that service? I don't know if they do or not. I don't think so. If they're not a member, I don't think they can be assessed. And the SSTA operates within 3/4 of a mile of existing routes. Does Colchester get any SSTA support because the bus is going through and it's actually stopping? That's a, you know, and then who pays for that? If they do, I don't have a clear understanding of how that would work. So I'd like to ask that question. Other questions that I'd like to ask is we've been asked to provide that special assessment. I know it's only $4,000 and some dollars, but then GMT has come back and said things have changed, so we don't need to do the buyouts that we were planning to do with that money, but we're going to hang on to it just in case we need it later. I'd like to know whether we could, this may not be worth the $4,000, but I'd like to ask the question of, you know, how they justify keeping it, which is not related to staying a member or not. Or if we leave, they're going to keep that money. Maybe that's another question to ask. And I think that's it. But Ian, I never thought of the can we have a private contract with SSTA? I didn't even think of that. Whether it would be more or less. I gotta imagine. I don't know if it would be more or if it would be less.
Probably more.
But probably more. But is it more than the whole thing, right? So,
It's a question worth asking.
yeah. So I'm fully in support of having Clayton come in and talk to us. Try to talk us into staying, I guess, if that's his desire.
Shannon, any input?
Yes, please. Andy, I feel like you were looking over my shoulder at my notes over here. I'm very interested in having the general manager, Clayton Clark, to come to the meeting at a future date, hopefully in this near future. And I'd love to know, very much see like numbers. I'd love to know the numbers of riders versus the costs presently we're paying. You know, I agree with Ethan, that's a large chunk of change. And, you know, over the past couple months, I've seen a lot of deterioration, at least of projected routes, Essex Route 10 and other ones. And, you know, if that money could be better spent, I would like to, you know, explore options. At the same point, I'd first like to have the conversation and almost, you know, Greg, work with you to send questions to Mr. GMT ahead of time so we can really have a productive conversation. So then we can make the best decision at a future date.
So I'm not hearing any objection from the board to having Clayton in. I would like to turn it over to public comment in case anyone has thoughts.
Harris Banks has joined, by the way.
Thank you.
Ken Signorello and I have a thought. Just want to remind the Select Board that the town is already the provider of mass transit services in the form of the senior bus program. It's something that we have some experience with, possibly getting some numbers about the cost of it and what kind of services it's currently providing and what it might take to extend it as a place to start because we already are doing it. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. So I will bring it back to the board. This was discussion only. Greg, do you have what you need?
I think so. Anything else?
Okay. All right, sounds good. I do see that Iris Banks has joined online, and as we're considering other appointments, if there is no objection, I'm going to go back to business item 6A. Not seeing anybody disagree. So we are now at interview a volunteer to serve on the Essex Free Library Board of Trustees. Iris, good evening.
Good evening. I apologize for being late.
Life happens.
Yes, indeed.
Iris, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Board of Trustees for the library.
I've been living in Essex for a long while. Our kids, we moved here from Williston when our kids were in middle school, and also just really love this library, was very active. I've been on the board for 2 terms, I guess. I enjoy that role, and it's, the library is such an important part of the community. I have been involved with a lot of the events and helping get the word out, and being at the table like at Town Meeting Day and other community events where different boards are represented. Also worked on and started a garden tour, which was also a fundraiser. Also brought some people into the library, actually, that really had not come before, to buy tickets and get information. So that was nice. Anyway, yeah, in general, I think my prior experience is helpful going forward as well. And it's such a great resource.
Thank you, Iris. I will turn it over for board questions.
Hi, Iris. Ethan Lawrence.
Hi.
I was just curious if you could tell me a little bit more about the garden tours and kind of what inspired you to, I don't know if you came up with that on
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yep. So we've had 2 so far. It was because I mean, I enjoy going on tours. I'm kind of a lazy gardener myself, but I like to learn and see other people's gardens. We tried to, so I was active, or used to anyway, go to the Flynn, had this big garden tour every year, and it was so nice. And I thought that would be something fun to do here. I guess years ago, Bridget Meyer said that there had been garden tours around Essex and in the Junction, but there haven't been lately. We had a committee that was made up of residents of the town and the city, and the tour included gardens in both places, and I thought that was really a good thing to do. We had a tea at a local perennial center, and the volunteers enjoyed it. The people who came also really enjoyed it. It was donation only, but we raised a fair amount of money, which was really nice and encouraging, because we wanted everyone to be able to come. So 2 years ago, last year also, it was kind of bad weather last year, so we had to cancel the tea, and I think, but we still did okay. We're kind of thinking about going to an every other year model, because actually this past year, we ended up being on the same date as the Jericho Garden Tour, and they do it every other year. So we're going to let them have a go this year, and then, we'll think about next year. Thanks for the question.
Iris, Andy Watts here. How you doing?
Hi, Andy. Good.
My question, this question I ask everybody is, what does, what are your thoughts about what it means to be a public servant?
Well, I think you need to be responsive to the community, also, efforts towards inclusivity, listening. We do a lot of kind of writing and rewriting some policies and trying to have things be clear and, be accessible, be welcoming. So all of those things. And so those are some really key things for me, and especially in a place like the library, where I don't know, for some people, they they have not really been there, and we try to talk a lot about other things that we have, like the library of things, things that might be of interest besides just taking out books or magazines. There's so much, really. And I know, there have been a lot of really great activities. I think we hope to really reach out to all kinds of people.
Kendall?
Hi, Iris. Kendall Chamberlain.
Hi.
I would just like to know a little bit more about how you regard your role as a trustee, where you mentioned you want to shepherd the library and move to the town center.
Right. So that's been really interesting to kind of learn more about. And I think that there are going to be a lot of, questions around transition. I know that also it's a lot of people are, or some people anyway, have expressed disappointment about the idea of moving. People are really attached to the building and the vibe. So, I think we will hopefully be able to give also a lot more information as things move forward, but also figure out a way to kind of explain or have people know what some of the benefits are. I think a lot of people realize things like parking and space and, some of the more obvious things that are challenges for us. Part of the reason we can't really have programs with a lot of attendees. I mean, the building has its limits. So I just think there are going to be there's going to be a need for just giving out a lot of information and giving people an opportunity to learn more about what that will look like in the end. I know that it's not really, I think things are not exactly totally finalized, but I guess there's a plan in place. So, so we just need to be, transparent as we can, but also, just talk about some of the advantages that there will be with with the move.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, do you have questions?
Yeah, building off of Kendall's question, I noticed in your application you talked about the pride you had for the fundraisers and different things. I'm curious what future fundraisers you think could happen and how much that could help raise for this pretty intensive, costly new library.
So we do work closely with Friends of the Library that do the fundraising events, and there's also a big book sale. There's the craft sale, so there's some really good events right now. I think that we've tended to have a lot of activities. Everything really is usually free in terms of if there's a speaker or activities. I don't think we charge typically, but I guess there could be more ideas around authors coming maybe, and some other kinds of events where we might have guests that there'd be interest that people would be willing to pay. I know bake sales, and we talked about that. That's part of I think usually for the book sales too, there's a bake sale. Yeah, I think we'll I mean that those activities do bring in some money too, which is really helpful. And I think we need to think about more interesting activities or speakers that can help as far as that goes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Iris, my only question is, do you have any questions for us?
I guess if you have thoughts that you would want to share about and maybe this has already been discussed a lot already, but what you would like to see in the new space.
I think that those conversations are upcoming and will involve the
Okay.
entire community. But
Yeah.
I definitely look forward to seeing you at some of those events and
For
sharing
sure.
at least my input, hearing your input, and I hope that other members of the select board will as well.
Great. Yep.
Iris, for the interviews that we're doing, we're doing the interviews in blocks, so to speak, per meeting. We're looking to appoint members, I believe, at the June 16th meeting. So we won't be making a decision this evening, but I'd like to thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you. And thank you all for your time. And again, I apologize for being late. I appreciate you fitting me in. Thanks so much.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
So at this point, the next item up on our agenda is consider appointment of representatives to the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission Board of Representatives. In the memo, you'll note that representatives to the CCRPC Board of Trustees, or excuse me, Board of Representatives, they've often been select board members. Currently, Andy is our board member. I am the alternate, but want to hear your thoughts about whether that is, we want to continue having board members. The memo does also give us the option that we could advertise openings publicly if the board so chooses.
Just one piece to add to that. Andy brought to my attention earlier today that the RPC typically recommends and looks for either current members of the legislative body or residents who have been on that board. So you could open it up, you could advertise it. It's been, as long as I can remember, past practice that board members be Essex's rep, and that's, I think, partially intentional from what the RPC is requesting as well.
Gotcha.
You could open it up, but the preference is that it be existing or past board members.
Okay, good info to have. What say you?
Hey, if I could.
Nope. Shannon, go ahead.
Sorry, it's awkward. I apologize. Thanks for making do. Appreciate you two serving for the past 2 years. I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about your participation and if you're open to serving again?
As the current board member, would you like to?
Sure. I think I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember how long. I think it's been 3 years that I've been on. I left because Jeff Carr moved out of town, and he had done it for probably 15 or 20 years before that. But I'm actually finally getting to the point where I feel like I have my feet under me. There is quite a lot that goes on. That the CCRPC is responsible for. Yes, I'm happy to continue to represent Essex. I do pass along often information to staff so that the, it's often that they are right on their toes and know all of it, but sometimes I feel like maybe I point things out, which I hope is good. But having said that, I'm happy to continue, but if someone else is really chomping at the bit to do it, I'm also willing to step aside to allow others to have the experience. That isn't an encouragement to not appoint me. I really do want to continue doing it. So.
Yeah, and as the alternate, alternates do have the opportunity to serve on various committees. Currently, I'm on the Long Range Planning Committee of CCRPC, even though I am just the alternate. So there is that opportunity. I would be happy to serve, but I would also be very happy to foster someone else stepping into that role, learning, making connections across the county in that role.
One other very interesting thing that happened in this is it turned out that there was an Andy Watts from Williston who was the Williston rep. And for a while there was a lot of confusion about which Andy Watts was speaking, so they had to clarify in the minutes all the time whether it was the Williston Andy Watts or the Essex Andy Watts. And Andy and I get together about once a month for dinner, and so it's been an interesting thing that I've made a very good friend. Happens to have the same name, and it's kind of fun when we split the bill and both the credit cards have the same name on it.
It does make for interesting
little
meetings.
bennies that you get. And you mentioned the long range planning. I was volunteered for the UPWP, which is the Unified Planning Work Program. There we go. Which decides where federal dollars are spent, federal transportation dollars are spent. And so that was a very interesting thing to participate in. And again, it's somebody else wants to jump into that role. I would step aside, but again, I want to do it.
My personal feeling is that this is one of the boards where Essex is very well represented by institutional knowledge and long-term serving. So I'm very happy that you guys would like to continue.
Is that a motion?
I would make that motion,
Okay.
yes. But I wanted to see if Ethan had any comment.
I just wanted to make sure Tracy wanted to keep going because it didn't sound like.
No, I definitely will, but if someone else wanted to step up and serve, I'm more than happy to take a back seat.
I'll just double check.
Yep.
Now's
Nope,
your
I'm
now's
good.
your chance.
I'm good.
So yes,
Second.
I would
Okay,
make
so
that
thank
motion.
you, Kendall. Thank you, Ethan. Let's see here. Kendall, Ethan, first, second. Is there any final discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Andy.
Congratulations, Tracy.
Congratulations myself, and thank you. Next on the agenda, consider appointment of representatives to the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's Transportation Advisory Committee. And I believe that, I just want to make sure that my memory is solid on this one. I believe the recommendation, if my interwebs will connect with me, is Aaron Martin and Annie Costandi. They have served in this role, so this would be a continuation as well. Is there any question, concern, discussion?
I'd like to move the question so we don't have public comment on it, maybe. But unless anybody else has anything.
Is there any public comment on the CCRPC Transportation Advisory Committee proposed appointment? We'll bring it back to the board.
Make the motion the select board appoint Aaron Martin as Essex representative and Annie Costandi as Essex alternate to the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's Clean Water Advisory Committee for 2-year terms running from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th.
And this was
27.
Were you?
Am I reading the wrong one?
Yeah.
No, I think it's written wrong.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
it's
That's
the
my fault.
Transportation Advisory Committee.
Oh.
Just getting
Okay.
back into the memo. Yeah, so where it says Clean Water Advisory Committee, just Transportation Advisory Committee.
Sorry.
That was my intention.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Andy. Is there any clarification on the motion needed? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by, oh, Shannon?
Sorry, I was just saying no, there's no need for clarification.
Okay, sorry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0, which brings us to the same. Consider appointment of representatives to the CCRPC Clean Water Advisory Committee.
So in discussions during meetings, this is referred to as the quack.
The quack.
CWAC, the quack. Yeah.
Like the duck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there any, is there any discussion? I'm going to try not to laugh. I'm failing miserably on the proposed appointment to the quack.
I think it makes a lot of sense that we have our staff members from the town on these committees, so no further discussion from me.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Ethan?
Make the motion the select board appoint Annie Costandi and as Essex representative, and I'm so sorry about your last name, Leah Sanguinetti, as Essex's alternate, and my internet just crashed. Hold on one second. To the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's Clean Water Advisory Committee for 2-year terms running from July 1st, 2025 to through June 30th, 2027.
Thank you. Ethan, is there a second? Thank you, Shannon. Sorry, I was lax on the last one. Is there any public comment on this appointment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0, which brings us to the end of the appointments, and at the consider first approval of the updated impact fee ordinance and potentially authorizing staff to warn a public hearing for final adoption. Who do we have this evening?
Jonathan Slayson with VSD Consulting, the consultant hired to assist the town, the fire department, to design the impact fees.
And Charles Cole, the fire chief.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Do you want to walk, did you have a presentation? Do you want to walk us through, or would you prefer just to take questions?
Whatever is the most efficient for the evening, and I think taking questions, I know that the board has had this and done a first read through. We have received some questions through Karen that you've presented to us, and I believe John has reviewed those and is ready to provide an answer.
That's correct. Yep. I received these questions late last, didn't have enough time to really go through in a lot of detail, but I think most of them that pertain to the pieces that I can answer, I do have answers for you. So it's discussion. So no presentation at this point, because we last I was here, we did go into a presentation on the impact fee study, which then the board voted to authorize pursuit of an ordinance update, and that is what has transpired. And I believe then we're at the point of addressing any questions on this draft ordinance update.
If I may, I think this is a fairly big addition and new thing for the town, so I'll just take a minute or two to give a little overview for anybody who might be tuning in or seeing it for the first time. But as John just said, the town contracted with him to do a fire impact fee study. This is something, one of your goals from the past couple of years is to find additional ways to raise revenue, such as through impact fees. What's in front of you today was in your reading packet at your last meeting. It's a revamp of the impact fee ordinance. We do have impact fees in place right now for recreation. This would be adjusting the impact fee ordinance to also start collecting fire impact fees. We have talked about doing recreation impact fees, updating that in the near future. We actually have an RFP out right now to help with that, along with a rec needs assessment. But what's before you tonight is the fire impact fee. Couple of decision points is which fee you want to start charging, and also what are the changes to the impact fee ordinance itself. Is that rather than having the impact fees baked into the ordinance, it would reference a separate attachment essentially that can get updated annually, whether that's for inflationary costs, project costs, stuff like that. So that would likely get built into your annual work plan as you go ahead, if this gets adopted, to take a look and see what adjustments might make sense for those fees. I think that's the very high-level overview. So unless you have anything else to add, or you two, then probably time for questions.
Questions? Andy?
Sure. In the escalation section, it talks about, or it mentions, it uses the phrase "over the life of the study." Do we need to be more specific there, or is that?
I don't believe we need to be more specific. The Nexus study does build out a plan that goes out to 2050. If the option B were to be pursued, which is the more expensive, but it's the fee that would give more revenue for a new station, that option is designed to have a sunset period and would be applicable for a period of time, presuming there would be maybe some bond payments required. So in that way, I would expect we could make it more specific to refer to the Nexus study. That would be maybe a recommendation of an improvement of the language, but I don't think that may be necessary because it's implied that you refer back to the Nexus study.
Okay. Okay. So it's okay. So it refers back to a
Yeah,
document that will be readily available for, so it won't be ambiguous. Somebody may claim
Correct.
you didn't because you weren't clear what the. Okay.
And it is, the escalation is a option that the select board has. It does not require you to escalate, and we can change the language. I know there's a comment about that as well. We could tie it to, there's examples that say 100% of CPI, and it doesn't have to say escalate or de-escalate. You'd be 100%. So if I think there was a question that I received that would say, well, what if the interest rate or it goes down? What if the CPI goes down? Then it would be reasonable that for that next year, the fees would go down. And that would be stand to reason, or we would keep it fixed. That would be probably the safe bet because we have collected some impact fees. So my recommendation is that you would escalate it. The ordinance refers to the Nexus study in one of the sections there, so I think it's pretty clear.
And it does say, can I keep going?
Yeah.
It does say that it'll be reviewed on an annual basis, and I'm just wondering how we're going to remember to do that.
That is the suggestion. Typically, fiscal year would be the time that you would do that.
So would we do it part of our budgeting process, or would it be, as a revenue line item, or how would we remember to do it?
You'd have an obligation from town manager office to say, here's the CPIU, here's what the value shows for this year relative to last year. This is the change. Select board, do you authorize the fee to change at the 100% rate? You have all jurisdiction to change it at a 0, 50%, whatever percent you have. So that is up to you. So I would recommend that at a point certain in the calendar, you put that on the agenda.
Yeah, we can find a time. Our union contracts reference the CPIU Northeast for December of each year. So perhaps something like this time of year as part of your reorg, as we're reviewing policies, reviewing stuff you have in place, that could be a decent time. We'll have the December numbers, but all up for discussion, and as to what makes sense.
But that's not something that we would define in the ordinance, how we're going to do that. It's just, I was just looking for things that the select board is asked to do in this.
Right.
Figure we just need to make sure we actually do them, yeah. Other question I had is about, there's a reference to an impact fee administrator. It just kind of appears, there's no definition of what this person is or who appoints them, or.
Typically, the select board would appoint or the town manager would appoint, and we can make that more clear. It is a impact fee administrator would be a staff allocated by, and in this case, the town manager would define the staff responsible for this in their job description. So we can put that into the ordinance that the town manager shall, I think, designate.
Yeah, the way it's written is says or designee, and then it says by the town manager, and so that was confusing. Does that by the town manager clause refer to just the designee or both? And so that, I don't know.
Right.
Just cleaner language.
I am not an
cleaning it up.
attorney,
Yeah.
but I think those are some languages that that I would refer back to town staff or to the attorney. But the town manager is to designate who shall administer this. That is the intention.
Okay, those were my questions. And I guess my other question is how we decide between A and B, right? I guess that's a discussion. So, all right.
Ethan?
My question is, one that I have asked many times across different subjects, and I'll be clear with everybody that I do own a farm. But my question for you is, through the exemptions, where it uses, the baseline of a zoning permit. I remember in the fire study that there was, we had a category in there for a small percentage of agriculture. And my question is, how would agriculture fare with the fact that there's no zoning regulations in Essex for agriculture? And this is based off zoning regulations in the fee study.
I might need to call the town staff in for some assistance, but the big picture, the legal framework that we're operating in, is that if a new or a land development, which I know is also a comment here, what are we talking about? Any land change that the town has authority over and that would require permits, because impact fees are a land development regulation. So it only applies in the case of where we have authority. And if the town land changes and the town has a permit authority over that change, and that change is estimated from the fee study, that if the land change would increase demands on the fire department, then there's a legal nexus to charge an impact fee. Okay. So you need to first go through, does the town have the authority of the land use change? Okay. If it does, then there needs to be an estimate of the degree of impact.
Okay. That answers my question perfectly. Because I was just wondering, I was like, I don't know, categorize, because I understand that we haven't set the fees. This is just giving us the ability to set the fees. Mm-hmm. But I was just thinking in my head, but that makes perfect sense. If zoning has control, if zoning has regulation over it, we can assess a fee.
Right.
If they don't, we can't.
Correct.
Perfect.
Questions?
If I could just jump in real quick.
Let Shannon go.
Yep, go ahead, Shannon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My question is just, have we gotten any recommendation from the housing committee in our town on this topic? I know that they are very concerned about developing housing and things like that, and this would obviously could have an impact on that.
Can you repeat that question? I could not understand.
Have we had input from the Housing Commission on this?
I do not believe we have. We've had our community development department look at it. I do not believe we've gotten housing commission input. No.
Okay.
Nope.
Not directly to
Not directly.
the impact fee side of things.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, happy to pontificate, but no need.
Questions?
My question was just a little more detail about the recreation impact fees. It was hard for me to understand exactly why the base impact fee for a single-family dwelling was different than a multifamily dwelling.
I'll attempt an answer to this because someone had asked something similar. In that study, they based the fee on, it's a per person fee, and they're taking household size as the proxy for single family and multifamily. So they're multiplying, I believe, by 2.2 of the fee per person for one of those uses and 2.9 for a different use. I can dive deeper if you want more specifics on that, but it was based on almost a per person impact fee correlated to that size of that unit.
And there is enough data on that to back it up. It just seems a little arbitrary, since it would be hard to determine that every single family had 3 people versus multi had 2. I just looked at that as maybe a little arbitrary. The data is solid enough to base that on? That's a common denominator?
So we did not do the recreation study. That's been in the ordinance right along, and I believe Greg and Karen can correct me, but they're in the process now of doing an RFP for an updated study.
Yes.
Okay.
So what you're reading is current language.
Okay.
Kendall, if I may add to that a little bit, the rec impact fee study that's based on is 21 years old.
It was
so
like 98.
It's been a while.
So
I can't speak to the data that's specifically in there. I am pretty confident saying that it's similar to like our water or in sewer flows. We see more water coming from single family homes. That typically correlates with more people in those homes. So it's a similar type of single family homes typically have more people, are going to have more bedrooms, which leads to a higher fee than compared to the multifamily units.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the information was there. Thank you.
Did you want to?
Well, I think Select Board Member Chamberlain, the fire impact fee also relies on a very similar calculation, so I didn't want you to be surprised to notice that at some point, that it is on a per capita basis, and there's strong data to indicate the average occupancy of the different dwelling unit types. And so rather than a multifamily, single-family distinction, however, in the fire department, we simply scaled it up by the number of bedrooms. That's where there was a strong relationship to the average occupancy.
Yeah, see that's why I'm most used to using like bedrooms as far as
Right.
It's a pretty standard across the thing when you
As
talk
housing
about-
units have become on the market have changed over the years, so there is clearly a distribution. There's some single families that are very large, some very small. So there is an average value, and that's what was probably historically used.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I will offer a comment, and I understand that this portion of the ordinance was not changed, but I do feel it's worth mentioning, similar to comments I've made about the dog ordinance as well. I'm often puzzled why the clock is reset each calendar year for violations. Essentially, if someone violates on December 30th and on January 2nd, that's not considered a subsequent violation, even though it's 3 days apart. So just, I've often wondered why it's written that way. But again, I understand that that's not language that you had changed or proposed. I just wanted to mention that.
I was going to say, could we ask staff if that is consistent throughout all of our ordinances, that the violations reset at the first of the year, all of them?
I
just don't
believe
know.
so. We'd have to do a double check to make sure that's the case, but I believe that is accurate.
With no other board comment, Andy?
So, yeah, I guess my question is, how do we decide between A or B? We need to decide that tonight, right? To go forward with.
Not necessarily.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I don't.
This is the ordinance, which we purposely excluded the fee schedule from being included in the ordinance. So it provides the community a more flexible approach. What's the annual escalation, for example. So the ordinance refers to the fee schedule. So the fee schedule is not part of the ordinance, just like the impact fee study. It's referred to. So you can have a conversation here to help answer any questions that you might have. This is probably a good time to do so, but I don't believe that's your action for tonight.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Okay. So it's okay.
Just the ordinance.
Yep, all right, great.
With no other board questions, I'm going to open it up to public comment if there is any. Ken, come on up.
Not sure.
These still work. Ken Signorello. I heard that the Housing Commission wasn't asked for input on this ordinance, which I thought would be a good thing to do. I'm glad that question was asked. I'd also point out that the Economic Development Commission also was not asked for input, and this seems like it would have some impact on economic development, so I would suggest that possibly both of those be solicited before moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. And with no other public comment, at least not seeing any, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion, potential motion. What's your pleasure? Ethan?
Just a question, but in my opinion, it sounded like there was some small changes that there was some questions here tonight about. So, if we warn this for first, we can make changes, or you would have to rewarn for 2 more.
Okay.
You can, if there's any changes that you definitely want to make tonight, you can approve it as amended. We would warn that. And then, if there are no changes after the public hearing, you could adopt it as is. If there are changes after that public hearing, we would warn another public hearing. You could also, until there's no more changes, you could also approve it tonight as presented with the understanding that there are going to be changes for the next meeting. The difference is that for the first public hearing, I think it's 10 days. We have to give
7 days.
7 days notice, which gets a little tricky with our publishing deadlines with our newspapers. After that first public hearing, the notification becomes 3 days for a public hearing notice, so you can act a little bit more quickly once you've had that first public hearing.
Ethan?
So would the recommendation be to warn a public hearing, understanding that there's most likely going to be changes, and then follow up? I mean, that would be two $75 fees.
Probably.
You have to warn
yes.
2 public hearings.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll look to the staff who've been working on this more than I have. I'm comfortable with that approach, but it doesn't have to be that approach. If you want to get a cleaner version and more questions answered, that is also totally fine.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand
Yeah.
the process again.
Andy?
So the changes that have been requested are clarification around the escalation and the
Designated.
impact fee administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I also have a note about referring to land development or redevelopment sort of consistently throughout the ordinance. That was a comment that came in at some point today. So another minor clarification on the list.
I think those changes are innocuous enough that we don't need to see what that language looks like before we warn. But then
Yeah.
I guess there's the suggestion that we have other commissions or committees look at this.
Yeah, and that's where,
Yeah,
it's a simple question to ask the appointed members of our committees and commission for feedback, and if they come back with something substantive, it may not sound like a lot, but I'd rather warn what we feel is the best version for the public to provide feedback in a public hearing. Just my own personal opinion. Andy?
There's no time sensitivity to this, or is?
There is and there isn't. I mean, there's not insofar as we have to get it done by such and such date. The longer you wait, the less you have to collect fees on projects that are in the pipeline. That said, it's been a year and a half to this point, roughly.
So there was a suggestion though that it be done by July 1st, so that you have a clean transition for another fiscal year. we're in April now. Do we, yeah, we could probably, I don't know,
Yeah.
we've only got 4 more meetings before July 1st. Is that enough time?
That was also staff's recommendation. It was somewhat arbitrary to align with the fiscal year, to give projects in the pipeline fair notice that it's coming, but we kind of chose it to align with the fiscal year. It wasn't as if August comes, we're going to be, have missed
And
some
we,
great deadlines.
we didn't budget any revenue from this?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so, yeah. I thought Shannon.
I don't want to be the only one speaking, so if anyone has different thoughts, please.
I was just thinking through the timing of other meetings. I don't know off the top, maybe you do, of when those groups meet and when they could consider this if the select board wanted to ask for feedback from the Housing Commission. Also suggested EDC, DRB.
Shannon, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just gonna second what you were saying, Tracy. You're not officially second, but support that. We have these committees and commissions for a reason, to ask for their opinions and their perspective. I think it's important that we get their input, even if it's minor. And I agree with you, Tracy, that whatever we warn should be as close to the final body and language as possible. So I know that 2 months might not be a ton of time, but I would hope that we could push this to them. I know many groups meet the first or second week of the month, so maybe by our second meeting in May we could have this ready to then warn and possibly make that July 1 deadline. But I think it's important to do our due diligence and utilize as many of our advisory groups as possible.
Did you have a comment?
So what we're presenting tonight is the language of the ordinance, which has had department head review as well as legal review from 2 different law firms, because it went to Bill Ellis and then it went outside of that. I don't see that other committees are going to have any substantive language changes for the ordinance, which is what we're asking you to review tonight. Perhaps on the schedule, which we haven't decided tonight, they would have input on. So pushing this down the road pushes this down the road. This has been 8 years that I've been working on this. Almost 2 years with John. So it's been a long time and a long process, and we've worked with staff for a very long time on this, getting this to tonight's presentation.
Ethan.
So what about the 2 points that Andy just asserted to about the are we all comfortable with the language there for the position? I mean, it's saying that we have to have that position. So that's a staff change. Right?
I would likely appoint probably somebody in finance to just make sure we're tracking and collecting. The zoning administrator is often the one who collects the fees when we're dealing with building permits. So off the top of my head, it would probably be one of those 2 positions.
And that's no problem.
Shouldn't be a big problem, no.
Okay.
It's the pleasure of the board. Andy?
I'm kind of leaning toward considering that the other committees might have more discussion about the fees that we're asking for rather than the language of the ordinance. So I'm in line with Charlie to want to go forward with a couple of relatively small 3 modifications that we've asked for this evening. That's just where I am.
Yeah. That is a good point.
I would
So
second that.
Shannon, go ahead.
That's a fair point. That's a good point, Andy, and I appreciate that. But to the prior speaker's point, 8 years, and I don't believe they've had committee and commission input. They've done their due diligence with the town staff, different things, but we have committees and commissions for a reason. We, the select board, appoint them to then advise us. Yeah, I would have hoped that in the 8 years you would have gone to one of those committee meetings and talked to the Housing Commission or the EDC that this is going to directly affect. So again, I think we need to, a couple more months tacked on to an 8-year project is not going to affect it significantly.
Yeah. Another question that I did raise was that section C of the first section only it indicates land development and redevelopment. Subsequent sections seem to only apply to new land development or new development. So I think clarification of that, does only one apply? Do both of them always apply? So that is appropriately warned for the public hearing. I think that clarity, among some others, would be important to get an approved draft before warning a public hearing. But again, I'm one member, so if others feel differently, happy to entertain a motion, or we can have it brought back.
Let's bring it back.
Okay. I am not hearing a motion, so I'm understanding that to be the consensus of the board is that we'd like to see final language and input from the committees mentioned to inform the final draft before public hearing. Good?
Understood.
Okay. Thank you for the work.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we will see you soon again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
The last item on our agenda is discussion about confidential attorney-client communications for executive session. So did we have anything to discuss in public session on that beforehand?
Nope.
Okay. So I will move ahead to the reading file, board member comments.
Do you have anything? What you're working on?
I don't think so.
Okay. Nope. I'm fine.
Okay. Ethan, did you have something?
Yeah.
I can keep my thing open. I have something too.
Yeah, no, mine just kicked me out again. I didn't know. So my question was going to be about the meeting schedule, and the reason I was going to ask the question was because of the select board tours, and there was only 2 dates posted, so I didn't know if one of those dates needed to be posted on here, if there was going to be 3 members, or if somebody wasn't going, or.
No, so Tammy did some more research into that, and we don't have to warn those as meetings. They're considered trainings, so
Okay.
you're not going to be discussing business. Please don't discuss business.
Yeah.
But it would be more doing a tour, seeing how the different departments function, different facilities function, but it would be considered training for a select board member rather
Okay.
than business. So we are able to do 3 or 4 or even 5 of you on a single tour.
Okay. Awesome. That was my only question.
Any other items for the reading file? Kendall?
Yes, I noticed in the investment update information, I just wanted to point out that we're putting the majority of our interest income just to the operating budget. And I just would like some talk about that in the future. About maybe taking some of that revenue and moving it to capital budget. On that same note, the investment updates and the budget memos are fantastic. Thanks, Dan. That's great. It was interesting that the highway grader had to be taken to New Hampshire for repairs. that was a surprise. And I would just note, again, I mentioned this before, looks like we're spending about $170,000 on unplanned repair in water and sewer. I think we've spent somewhere between $100,000 to $200,000 every year on an unplanned water force main or something happening. When the budget comes up, can we talk? And it is coming up because the budget's in here. Can we talk about putting some money into consultants or something? Some of that money towards finding some of these concerns, because I know that they're short-staffed and we just need to find some of them before they fail. It seems pretty consistent that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on unplanned repairs. So I just wanted to note that.
Okay. I do also just want to bring attention to 7J. General updates, the active transportation plan, municipal complex reappraisal. In case folks aren't aware, there has been a revamping of our website. Kudos to staff who've been working on that. I think it looks fantastic. It's bright, it's colorful, it's welcoming. And also there is a link to the section of the website where you can get those updates as a direct link. So thank you for including that in the packet, not only for us, but for folks just reading the packet so that they have a direct link to those updates. And that brings us to, go ahead.
I believe Shannon has a comment.
Oh, yes, Shannon.
Sorry about that. I my only comment was I looked at through the check warrants, and I saw there was a number of payments to Amazon that I feel could have been made locally. I think it's important to support our local businesses as much as possible, such as batteries, tissues, soap, gloves. I'd love for the town staff to look for opportunities to first get it locally rather than buying it through Amazon or other online orders, paying for shipping likely. And I really do believe that we need to support our local businesses as much as possible.
Thank you, Shannon. I don't believe we need to discuss the employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. I think that was just for appointments. So if no one wants to have that discussion this evening, yeah, you can exclude that, the appropriate motion for that item. But at this point in time, I would entertain a motion on the attorney-client communications item. Andy?
I make the motion that the Select Board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second? Thank you, Ethan.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Andy?
Make the motion that the Select Board enter into executive session to discuss attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body and to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1F and 1 VSA 313A2 to include the town manager, deputy town manager, and community development director.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. We are now in executive session. Will we be coming back or no? No.
I don't think so.
We will only be reconvening to adjourn this evening.